Hey guys, AscendantGod here, and below. Here with Raid Shadow Legends doing a champion spotlight on Turvold here. Turvold is a legendary champion. He's an attack champion, barbarian faction. He's Void champion as well, which is great. He's absolutely amazing champion. I mean, he's amazing in just about every single encounter in the game except for maybe the spider dungeon. Of course, not good for that one since he's a single target champion, but other than that, he's a great asset in every other encounter in the game. Now, his damage scales better than any other champion that I know of in the game, for starters. Now, there's a couple of things for him as far as clan boss, okay? Two different things. Number one, he doesn't play well with buffs other than his own. The problem is, let me show you why. Now, before I get too much into that, let me show you his skills. Alright, so for those of you who don't know yet, or you still just got him, he's new, you're not familiar with his abilities, number one, his A1 has a weaken, which is nice. It's a 2-hit. And it's got a buff recently in a recent patch. It used to be a 30% base chance. Now it's a 55% base with 20% boost. So 75% chance of placing the weaken, which is pretty solid. And he does a pretty good job at keeping weaken up on the boss, especially if you go with the support tree and Master Hexer, which for the most part you should be in the support tree with him as far as your masteries. Now, what else he has is his A2 here, where it gives him a 50% increased attack, 30% increased crit rate, as well as a 30% increased speed for 2 turns. Alright, and then it gives him an extra turn. This is where he rips through turns and where he doesn't play well with other buffs, like I said. Alright, but where it does play well is that with his A3 here, the damage increases according to the number of buffs on him. So, with that said, on manual attacks, you can basically make him do a lot more damage if he's playing with other people's buffs, because you can use those extra buffs to cause him to do more damage. Now, with my current stats, my current gear, what I have going on here, with every additional buff above and beyond the 3 that he gives himself, I find that they give him almost 10,000 damage per extra buff. So if he has 2 extra buffs on him above and beyond those 3, he tends to do about 20,000 more damage. A little bit under that, I would say. Maybe about 9,000. Close to somewhere between 18 to 20,000 extra damage. It's huge for each buff. So, but the problem is that, say, if you're running with a counterattack group, which if you're doing Ultra Nightmare, you're doing in-game content, you should be running with a counterattack group or a double counter. With that said, the problem is that when you have him on manual, you can throttle things and, you know, keep him in check when the damage starts to get lethal. On auto attacking, it'll have a big impact on his survivability, because when he's left to his, you know, to his own mechanics on auto attacking, he'll rip through the counterattack, rip through increased defense, rip through you know, other buffs that'll give him survivability, shields from Valkyrie, things like that, and end up getting himself killed a lot quicker than if you use him manually. If you're using him manually, then it's not a huge concern, because you know when you're going to have to start throttling him and not rip through his attacks. Because for the most part, the goal with him is to use his A3 as often as possible, so long as you have your 3 buffs on you. Okay? So that's the biggest goal with Turvold, to get the most damage out of him, is you want to be using this A3 whenever you have your 3 buffs on you. Very, very few exceptions. Like, say if you have him, like, really just for the clan boss. In the dungeons, it's pretty much a given, you always use it. In arena, you always use it. Only exception is, like, say if you're on the clan boss, you have your 3 buffs, you have Juggernaut available, but the boss doesn't have defense down on them, doesn't have weaken on them, and you're about to get a couple more buff from, say, somebody like Martyr or Valkyrie or something, and you're about to get a counterattack and an increased defense, or a counterattack and a shield, then sure, you probably want to wait until that defense down is up on the boss, or the weaken is up on the boss, and then come at the boss with the extra 2 buffs on top of the increased damage because of the defense down and weaken on the boss. But otherwise, it's very, very rare you'd ever want to skip this A3 when it's available. So, and even then, you have to use your better judgment of like, okay, well, weaken isn't on the boss, but I'm about to get a counterattack next, like right after this turn. In that case, yeah, you probably just want to use it. So again, it's rare that you wouldn't want to use the A3 when it's available, just because of how hard it hits, regardless. So anyway, other than that, second thing about him when it comes to the clan boss, he brings amazing amounts of raw damage to the fight, as well as adds additional damage to everybody else with the weaken on his A1 here. Now, with how well he scales, obviously if you have somebody like, say, Arbiter for weaken, where they have it on their A1 and they can do a good job at keeping up weaken, then you want to give them accuracy and forego his, because obviously, you know, passing up accuracy on him, like I have him for accuracy because I need him for the weaken on the clan boss. But obviously if you can pass up accuracy, that means you can either give him more survivability and more defense, ideally, or some hit points, but defense is better for the most part, or the other option would be some more crit damage. Okay, so now as far as that, just generally speaking, now that we covered the things on clan boss, typically you want lifesteal gear on Turvold. The reason being is that his damage is so intense that even if you don't have him on clan boss, like in the dungeons or faction wars, the damage that he does to enemies will typically top off his hit points, even without like the War Master from the clan boss. So he's his own healer in pretty much all encounters. So lifesteal is just a great set to have on him, because he'll still do a ton of damage, but he'll also help his own survivability by topping off his hit points all the time. Now, if you're only using him in arena, then you could maybe go like a cruel set, crit rate sets, crit damage, or attack sets, and focus more on damage on him. You can also do this on the clan boss if you have some other champion in your roster with serious damage mitigation or healing, like say Bad El-Khazar or Warlord, somebody like that. Now if you're using him for dungeons and playing him for faction wars, which if you have him you certainly should be playing him in faction wars, be careful with going heavy on pure offense. It'll make him really squishy, and while he is his own healer, he can't heal himself if he's dead. So like I had this issue with Nethril a while back. With Nethril, I wanted to make him a glass cannon for arena because he's amazing in arena, but when I made him a glass cannon for arena, it compromised his survivability in the dungeons as well as in faction wars. So you know, you just got to be careful with things like that. But I mean, if you're just using Turvold for arena, you're not worried about dungeons, faction wars, maybe that faction isn't that strong for you, Turvold's your only really good champion, then sure, you could go ahead and do that and just focus on making him a glass cannon as well for arena, if you know you're going to be going first most of the time. Like with me, I wouldn't worry about it. I have almost 300 speed on Arbiter here. So, I mean, if you're pretty much always going first in arena, you're doing really good in that, and you're focused on building him for arena, then sure, go cruel set, go attack sets, go whatever you can to maximize his damage, and go make him a glass cannon, because then he'll just one-shot everything one by one and take everything out. So that's perfectly fine as far as that. It depends on what you're using him for, but if you're using him for dungeons, you're using him for faction wars, and especially if you're using him for clan boss, you need a modest amount of defense, modest amount of hit points on him. Now, as far as stat priorities on him, one great thing about Turvold is that he only needs 70% crit rate because of this A2 of his. Okay, because again, he gives himself 30% increased crit rate, and this is something that should always be used when you're using his A3. This should always be available. You're going to find that it's rare that you'd ever have Juggernaut available where you don't still have the 3 buffs on you from this. It's very, very rare, like maybe if you take a stun from the boss, something like that, and you may not have it available. For the most part, your A3 is going to have these 3 buffs already up when the A3 is available. But now with that said, this gives you 30% crit rate, so you only need 70% crit rate here total. I have 54 plus 15, so it's 69. It's literally 1 point shy of the 70%, but with the gear that I had for him, it's 99% crit rate with the bonus. It's very rare that he ever misses it, but ideally, you'd want 70% here, not 69. So I'm a point shy. Anyway, but Other than that, really what you want to do is just pour tons of crit damage into him, because that's really what scales the best with him. I mean, you want at least 2,000 attack minimum. If you have decent gear, really, ideally 2,500 or more is what you should be shooting for with that. But after that, mainly you want to be focusing on crit damage. He just scales amazing with crit damage once you get him up to that 100% crit rate with his bonus A2. And, you know, but again, make sure to give him at least a little bit of defense, a little bit of hit points for survival. Because even if you have him just in arena, remember, even if you don't kill the enemy, they're going to be coming back at you. And if they're coming back at you and he's extremely squishy, he's going to get himself killed. Now, if you have Arbiter or somebody else that can resurrect, sure, don't worry about it, because you can just bring him back anyway. But otherwise, you got to be careful with that. Now, as far as the masteries here, as far as an in-depth guide for this, I would say take a look at my mastery build guide videos, because they'll give you more in-depth coverage than what I'm going to cover here. I'm going to cover the general, like, most important basics here. Number one, always have him in the offense tree here for War Master. I mean, even if you're not using him on Clan Boss, it's just too good to forego. Now, if you're definitely not using him for the Clan Boss, your main focus is Arena, possibly Helm Smasher, but you'd probably be better off with Flawless Execution, the extra plus 20% crit damage. I've never used either of these, but looking at them and from what I've heard from other people, the Flawless Execution is really solid on somebody like him that scales well with crit damage. But this Helm Smasher, it's kind of a gamble, because it's only a 50% chance of ignoring 25% of the target's defense. But if he does ignore it, this is amazing. I mean, it's 25%. That's pretty solid. But I believe that for the most part, Flawless Execution would be the better choice of the two. But again, if you're using him in dungeons, for the bosses, the War Master is going to be much better. Using him in Faction Wars, again, for the bosses, in fact, this is going to be better. So for the most part, you're going to be choosing War Master for him, with very, very few exceptions. And now, as far as the support tree, like I said, you should always be going support tree with him. You really shouldn't go defense, just because of lasting gifts here. 30% chance to extend the duration of any buff cast by this champion by 1 turn. Now remember, on his A2, he's given himself 3 different buffs. So, I mean, you absolutely want lasting gifts, because then it's a 30% chance to increase any of these by 1 turn. And I mean, these are some amazing buffs. 30% increased crit rate, 30% increased speed, 50% increased attack. Those are huge. You absolutely want to try to extend those as frequently as possible. So you absolutely want lasting gifts on him. Now, other than that, if you do need him for weaken, Master Hexer all the way. Some people would say, like, oh, well, what about Sniper? Sniper only gives you an extra 5% chance to apply it, which is nice, but the thing you have to consider here, this is a 30% chance to extend the duration of the buff by 1 turn, which basically saying is a 30% chance to increase this by a full turn, basically a 50% increase, because normally it's 2 turns. So that would extend it to 3 turns. So this Master Hexer you get more out of than Sniper if you are using him for the, basically that weaken. Now, with that said, if you're not using him for the Clan Boss, then if you're, then there's the possibility of going for this one over here. Now, because you might pass up these skill books, you're not worried about the extra speed from this. This one here, Lore of Steel, is nice for the Clan Boss. If you have gear like a speed set on him with life steal, or say if you have bad Alcazar or Warlord or somebody else with serious damage mitigation and you don't have these basic sets, you have like Cruel on him, then sure, you don't need to worry about that. But if you have him on Clan Boss, this isn't going to benefit him. But in the dungeons, in Arena, as well as Faction Wars, this could be great on him. Because even in stage 20 dungeons, a lot of times he will do more than 30% of the target's max hit points. He's one of the very, very few champions that hits so hard that even in stage 20 dungeons he will. And with that said, This is very, very valuable on him. If it wasn't for the fact that I have him on Clan Boss and I need that extra increased speed on him from this skill right here, I would absolutely have this on him, because it's amazing. Because then this means even if you don't kill the enemy, there's a 30% chance of decreasing the cooldown of a random skill by 1 turn, because he's almost always going to do 30% of the target's max hit points unless he's on a boss. So, but in Arena, yeah, he's going to be doing more than 30%. In Dungeons, yeah, Faction Wars, I mean, everything except for the bosses, like I said, he'll be doing more than 30% almost always. So, that is a really, really good skill to have on him. Again, if I didn't need this one, eventually I want to put it on him, because I use him for the dungeons, I use him for Faction Wars, and this one here would be amazing on him just because of how easy it is for him to get it. But again, I got this on him for now. I'm probably going to change his specs out, because you're not going to benefit from this on the boss, but in every other encounter you're going to. So, in Arena, if you're running into him in Arena, he's a huge threat to you, okay? You have to lock him down, or else he's going to be killing your champions off. It's now, if you only have a provoke, even a provoke is good against him, because his A1 here without the A2 isn't that huge of a threat. The things you want to lock down is his A2 and his A3. Those are the things that be a threat. But if he gets his A2 off and then he's using his A1, the A1 is going to hit pretty freaking hard too. So you got to be careful with that. If he's already cast his A2, though, that means he's already cast his A3, because he gets that extra turn. Unless this person didn't do, I think, the Ascension or something. But, I mean, then I don't think he gets an extra turn without the Ascension. But anyway, but then you're just playing against somebody that's a failure, so it's probably not going to be a threat anyway. But, point being, you gotta be careful of Turvold in the Arena. He's one of the champions that if you don't get him in check, he's going to be one-shotting your champions most likely. So, you gotta lock him down in Arena. Now, that covers the basics about him as far as stats, gear options, masteries, his skills, how to play with him, his benefits. So overall, as far as in dungeons, definitely got to give him a solid 9 screams. I would give him 10, but the only reason I don't give him 10 is just because of his lack of debuffs for the enemies. But I still give him a 9, even though he doesn't do a bunch of debuffs, he doesn't do any kind of crowd control, provokes, or anything like that on the enemy, no stunts. He still does so much damage on a single target that I have to give him a 9. He's a solid 9 for dungeons. I bring him into every encounter in dungeons except for Spider, because he's just too valuable to pass him up. As far as Clan Boss, he's going to get a solid 8 screams. He's good. He's really good on Clan Boss just because he does so much raw damage. In my group, he is the second highest damage dealer, second to Dracomorph. Now, the reason Dracomorph does more is because he has these poisons that are 3-turn poisons. Problem is that Dracomorph is limited to the number of debuff slots that the Clan Boss has. So there's times where I can't use my poisons because the boss's debuff slots are full. You only get those 10. So with that said, there's a limit as to what I can do with Dracomorph. There's no limit to the damage I can do with Turvold, short of how many buffs can I get on him and what kind of gear can I put on him to do damage. But I'd never run out of debuff slots for him because his damage isn't based on debuffs. So that's one of the great things about him. Now, so that's what makes him an 8 on Clan Boss. There are better choices. I mean, and he also brings Weaken to the boss. There are better choices. There are choices that are much better than him. But I do give him a solid 8 because he is a pretty good champion on the Clan Boss. And in Arena, I can't give him anything less than a blood-curdling 10 screams. I mean, in Arena, he is devastating. He's absolutely devastating. He's amazing for one-shotting the targets that you want to take out, for just sniping those targets. and just taking out whoever you want to take out. He's amazing. At the bare minimum, he's going to severely cripple them, with leaving them with a shred of their life left afterwards. And in Faction Wars, again, nothing short of 10 blood-curdling screams. I mean, he just... There's only 4 legendaries in Barbarians. And, I mean, if you have him, you should always have him in your Faction Wars. There's no composition I could think of in Barbarians for Faction Wars where you would not want him as a staple in it. He's just amazing. So, yeah, definitely a 10 in Faction Wars. So, I think that covers all the basics with him, his usefulness, things like that. If you have any other questions that this video didn't cover, definitely let me know in the comments section. Questions, comments, stupid statements, any feedback you want to add, anything that I may not have covered, definitely leave it in the comments. But otherwise, I think that's a pretty comprehensive coverage of him. Again, overall, he's an amazing champion. I absolutely love him. He's one of the most powerful voids in the game, I feel, as far as raw damage especially. I mean, there's some champions that bring more to the table than him, but I mean, his raw damage, I don't know anybody that does more raw damage than him to a single target like that. It's just crazy what he does. So anyway, guys, I think that's all that I got for him though for now. So yeah, again, any questions, comments, statements, leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, I think that's a pretty decent coverage of Turvold here. And so yeah, that's all that I got on him for now. So I'm gonna get back to the game here, and until the next episode, if you guys have Turvold, you are a very lucky person. And if you don't have him, be careful of him in Arena, I can tell you that. So until the next episode, guys.
Hi guys, this is Anthony here, also known on this channel as AscendantGod. Wanted to thank you for checking out my channel here, really appreciate it. Be sure to check out the other videos, I got plenty of goodies on here. Also check out the description sections in the videos, got plenty of links on there for all different kinds of goodies that I think would be worthwhile for you guys. If there is something in particular that you don't see on my channel that you want to see, be sure to let me know in the comment section as well. And I think that's about it. All I've got, I'm just going to get back to this thing here. I'm pretty sure if I just...
Oh, we have such sights to show you.
Wow. That's really funny. Same here.